Saki here from Saki Tech, and in today's video we will do a full and complete comparison between the iPhone 7 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge. Just to put things in perspective, the iPhone 7 came to light in September 2016 while the S7 Edge in March 2016. So there's an approximate 6-month gap between the two. A lot of people are asking questions like, is the S7 Edge better than the iPhone 7 Plus? Or is the iPhone 7 Plus better than the S7 Edge? While trying to decide which one to buy. And of course, there are people who have already made their choice but are still left slightly intrigued by what's on the other side. So in this video, we will do an in-depth comparison between the iPhone 7 Plus versus the S7 Edge and draw a conclusion to tackle all concerns and questions directly. Let's dive right in. The S7 Edge is meticulously crafted out of metal and glass with no trace of plastic. The bezel of the device is all magnesium alloy, whereas the front and back panel of the device are built using Corning Gorilla Glass. Of course, with the S7 Edge, you get that beautiful curvy edge on the front glass, which adds a new dimension of beauty not found on other smartphones. The final result of this construction is a device that looks like a rock star and feels like $1 million. But the iPhone 7 doesn't disappoint either. It's crafted out of aircraft-grade aluminum with artistic precision, with a sleek, curvy design and a smooth, continuous form factor. Both devices look gorgeous from all angles, so in terms of aesthetic looks, the choice will boil down to personal preference. Go ahead and tell me which one you think looks better and why in the comments below. I'll tell you that I prefer the looks of the S7 Edge better, especially due to those curved edges. Now let's talk about water resistance capabilities. The S7 Edge has an IP68 grade water resistance, while the iPhone 7 gets graded at IP67. The major difference here is that while both phones can easily handle water splashes, rainy days, and a quick shower, only the S7 Edge gives you a green light to actually take your phone underwater, which could be useful for taking underwater photos and video. In fact, you are allowed to have your S7 Edge underwater for up to 30 minutes, not to exceed a depth of 5 foot or 1.5 meters. Apart from water, both the iPhone 7 and S7 Edge are equally protected from dust, dirt, and sand. Finally, as I always say, the fact that these phones are made out of smooth and shiny materials also makes them very slippery and prone to sliding out of your hand onto the floor. If that happens, and if you don't have a case, your phone will most likely get a shattered screen or some kind of damage, and that's not what you need in your life. I advise a protective case, sleeve, or a skin, though that comes at the slight cost of hiding the true beauty of your smartphone, but what can you do? In this category, S7 Edge has somewhat of a lead because it has a higher water resistance grade and, in my opinion, a better and more radical design. Let's move on to the processor and memory. So the iPhone 7 sports a quad-core A10 Fusion processor and 3 GB of RAM. And as for the S7 Edge, you get 2 different processors. In US, Chinese, and Japanese markets, you'll be getting a powerful 64-bit quad-core Snapdragon 820 processor, while the European and Asian markets will get a powerful 64-bit Exynos octa-core 8890 processor. Both versions will have 4 GB of RAM. Now the base iPhone 7 model starts at 32 GB of internal storage, with an option to buy a 128 GB or 256 GB model. The S7 Edge comes in a 32 GB internal storage model, and of course it offers an SD card slot which allows you to add, if needed, up to 256 GB of extra storage space using a micro SD card. That's something a lot of people appreciate since you aren't limited to a set amount of storage. With the iPhone 7, if you get 32 GB model, you're stuck with 32 GB for the life of your ownership, as you cannot add additional storage due to the lack of storage expansion slot. I would recommend that you buy the 128 GB model for the iPhone 7 if you decide to go that route. Now, it would have been nice to be able to have an expansion slot on the iPhone 7, but seeing as how there are now highly available 128 GB and 256 GB models, I'm not too concerned about expansion slots as I used to be, though they're still convenient to have. Now towards the end of this video, I will run a processor and memory benchmark on both of these phones to see which one has more raw processing power, so stay tuned for that. Now let's quickly talk about the dimensions. The iPhone 7 Plus measures 158.2 millimeters in height, 77.9 millimeters wide, and 7.3 millimeters thick. It weighs 188 grams. The S7 Edge is only 149 millimeters in height, 72.6 millimeters wide, and 7.7 millimeters thick, and it weighs 157 grams. So obviously the iPhone 7 is thinner, but the S7 Edge is smaller overall and lighter. But in all honesty, I've stopped caring about minor size differences a while ago. This is certainly not a category that will make you decide between the two. So let's move on to the display. The iPhone 7 Plus comes with a 5.5-inch IPS LCD screen with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and 401 pixels per inches. While the S7 Edge comes with a 5.5-inch screen, it's a Super AMOLED screen and a resolution of 1440 by 2560 and 534 pixels per inches. Look, there's nothing wrong with the iPhone 7 display. It's a gorgeous, sharp, and clear display with accurate color reproduction. It even has been improved over the 6S with 25% more brightness and a wider color gamut, which means, again, better color reproduction. It is certainly a world-class display. It is, after all, as of the publication of this video, the latest flagship device from Apple. But the S7 Edge does have an edge. It will be sharper because of that higher Quad HD resolution. It will be more vibrant, and it will be a richer display with fine details popping out. This may not be directly obvious when you're watching standard definition movies or playing games, but it will be very obvious when you look at high resolution pictures, videos, and even some content-rich websites. I do believe, though, based on my own eyesight, that the iPhone 7 seems to have more accurate colors while the S7 Edge has a sharper display. I'd say the win does go to the S7 Edge because it does have a higher resolution, which offers more sharpness, and Super AMOLED certainly is an excellent technology. But again, iPhone 7 is also a world-class display and has been improved this time around, but it simply isn't as sharp as the S7 Edge. Now let's move on to a much more important comparison category, the software. Now because software is something we use extensively, let's go into some detail. The S7 Edge comes with the latest version of Android with a flavor of Samsung, whereas the iPhone 7 Plus comes with the latest version of iOS. Anytime you compare Android and iOS, two major differences become palpable: customization capabilities and app ecosystem. First, let's take a look at the customization capabilities. This is a field where the S7 Edge will take the win because you can fully customize this phone and personalize it to fit your personal sense of style. You can also add some spice to your home screens using live widgets such as calendars, clocks, weather, news feeds, and create color-themed folders. You can even download and install custom themes from the theme market, and your phone will look like a different device altogether. Unfortunately, none of this is possible on the iPhone yet. All you can do is change your wallpaper for the lock and home screens, and you get a static grid of app icons on each home screen with the ability to create folders, and that's all. Second difference is the app ecosystem. Now, although both the Google Play Store and Apple App Play Store have millions of apps available for download, the quality of apps and games that come from the Apple App Store is simply better. Let's be clear. Of course, the Google Play Store has some really amazing apps and games, but when you compare the quality ratio, Apple App Store wins by having a higher number of quality apps and games, period. Therefore, if you're an app and game-only person that isn't concerned about customization features, and especially if you're an avid mobile gamer, iPhone 7 will be the better choice. I would even say that the gaming experience on the iPhone 7 is consistently better than the S7 Edge. Another thing I want to talk about is 3D Touch, featured on the iPhone 7 Plus. The S7 Edge has nothing to rival the 3D Touch. What you get is a pressure-sensitive screen that can sense how firmly you are pressing on the screen. Based on the force with which you do press, it will offer you two basic functions: peek and pop. Basically, you press very lightly to peek into content such as hyperlinks, directions, photos, emails, text messages, and you get previews. But then if you press firmly, you can pop into the full content that you just previewed. 3D Touch also allows you to press on home screen app icons to bring up shortcut menus, which they call quick actions. On top of quick actions, you can also use 3D Touch within actual apps, which allows for new ways to interact with every dimension of your iPhone 7. And although the S7 Edge has nothing like 3D Touch, it has Edge panels that are extremely practical and useful. And in this case, the iPhone 7 Plus has nothing alike. Basically, you can slide inwards from the edges of the screen and get access to various edge panels. These can be shortcuts to your favorite apps, your frequent contacts, and even widgets that feed you info on weather and stocks and much more. Edge panels are fully customizable and it's a nice perk to have. So both phones come with some unique elements. The S7 Edge does offer split screen multitasking, which means you can have two apps running side by side at the same time and interact with them both. As you can see in the video, I have the YouTube app on top and Maps on the bottom, and I can switch back and forth as I please. This is quite a useful feature that the iPhone doesn't offer, but I hope it will soon. Let's move on to the camera. Let's get the numbers out of the way. So the S7 Edge sports a 12 megapixel rear-facing camera with an aperture of f1.7. The iPhone 7 Plus is slightly different. It has a dual camera system. It has a regular wide-angle 12 megapixel camera with an aperture of f1.8 and a 12 megapixel telephoto camera with an aperture of f2.8. The reason the telephoto lens exists is to give you two things: 2x optical zoom and bokeh. And of course, both phones have optical image stabilization. So, which camera is better? That's really hard to answer because both of these cameras produce absolutely stunning photos, whether it is in bright daylight or in low light conditions. I'm going to simply tell you that it won't matter which phone you pick because either way you get stunning results. S7 Edge had a better camera than the iPhone 6s Plus, but the iPhone 7 Plus has caught up and even introduced a dual camera system that works to give you optical zoom. Now, 2x optical zoom, though quite welcome, doesn't impress me to the point of making it a game changer in any way. What would concern me is the camera quality, and like I said, they both are fantastic cameras not to be taken lightly. I do have to say that when I inspected similar photos on a high-resolution computer, the iPhone 7 Plus seemed to have more fine detail for daylight photography, but for low light photography, the S7 Edge has slightly better details. But in either case, it was not by a large margin. What about video? Both phones can record in 4K at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, and 720p at 240 frames per second for some super slow motion video. iPhone 7 can record slow motion videos at 1080p at 120 frames per second, something the S7 Edge can't do. On the front, we have a 7 megapixel camera for the iPhone 7 and 5 megapixels for the S7 Edge. They both do an amazing job of capturing selfies and video conferencing. Alright, so the conclusion is an easy one. No matter which phone you get, you will be happy. Let's move on to the battery. The iPhone 7 Plus has a battery capacity of 2900 milliamp hours, while the S7 Edge has a battery capacity of 3600 milliamp hours. Now, as far as battery life is concerned, you will be pleased to know that both of these phones will get you through the day no problem, with medium to use bordering even on heavy use. That's a healthy combination of making calls, text messages, launching and interacting with your daily apps, catching up on news, a couple of hours of gaming and video, and just being on your phone browsing and pretending to be doing important stuff while you are actually checking useless updates on your Facebook. And that's fantastic, but the great thing with Samsung smartphones is that you get numerous battery charging and battery management features which are designed to make charging faster and extend your battery life as much as possible. So with the S7 Edge, you get fast wired charging which charges your phone from 0 to 50 in 30 minutes and from 0 to 100% a little over an hour, as well as fast wireless charging if you hate cables, which charges your phone from 0 to 100% in a little over 2 hours. S7 Edge also has what is called Ultra Power Savings Mode, which transforms your phone into a simplified grayscale interface and limits the number of usable apps. You cannot play video games, stream, or watch video, but you're only limited to the basics such as calling, texting, or using a calculator. For the iPhone 7 Plus, you don't have fast wired or wireless charging, but you do have a low power savings mode that will turn off some visual effects and some other battery intensive features to conserve battery life. So for battery life, both phones do a great job of giving you a full day of use, but as far as charging options and software capabilities for extending battery life, the S7 Edge is the winner. Now let's move on to the security features. Fingerprint sensors are standard on both phones and they work flawlessly 99.9% of the time to unlock your phone, pay for purchases, and log into apps that support fingerprints. Everything looks great here, so let's move on and talk about prices and colors. The iPhone 7 has 5 colors: jet black, which is a high gloss black that shines, a matte black, silver, gold, and rose gold. Prices start at $769 for the 32GB model, while the S7 Edge has 4 colors: gold, silver, white, and black. Prices start at approximately $600 for a 32GB model. And now let's do a quick benchmark and then we will move on to the conclusion. Now we will be using the newest iteration of the Geekbench benchmarking tool to see which one of these phones has more power. So let's kill all the background tasks and launch Geekbench. I will of course fast forward to the end of the benchmark so we don't waste 2 minutes staring at the screen. And as you can see, the iPhone 7 Plus has quite a lot more power than the S7 Edge. Both in single core and multi-core performance, it's leading the S7 Edge with over 1500 points. And this is the kind of power you need to run heavy-duty apps such as video editing apps or some high-end gaming. So let's try to put everything together and figure out which smartphone is right for you. The S7 Edge certainly seems to have some better water resistance capabilities, an SD card expansion slot, and it's got a sharper, high-resolution screen. For me, it also has a better design. But again, the design is a subjective feature, and as I said, you may like the iPhone 7's design better. But beyond the design, S7 Edge is not that much greater than the iPhone 7 Plus, other than the 3 things I mentioned a second ago. iPhone 7 is actually a faster device with more processing and graphical power. Smartphones can't be compared based on the spec sheet anymore. A phone with 3GB of RAM might outperform a phone with 4GB of RAM based on software and hardware optimization. So how do we make a choice between 2 amazing smartphones that belong to 2 different worlds? Primarily, we look at the software. And when you look at the S7 Edge, you should realize that you are getting an Android-based experience, which means an open-ended system with full customization and personalization capabilities, in addition to some more productive features such as split-screen multitasking. With the iPhone 7 Plus, we have a closed-ended system which certainly isn't customizable at all, but it does provide a superior app ecosystem and pulls quite ahead in gaming. All games that I played on the iPhone 7 Plus simply played better than their Android counterparts, meaning you get a higher frame rate and a smoother gameplay. But as far as making calls, sending text messages, browsing the web, accessing basic apps like Facebook or Twitter, or perhaps some financial apps to manage your bills and accounts, both phones will give you a rock-solid experience. So if you are a generalist and you just want an amazing phone, you can go with either phone. You could simply pick the one that looks prettier, because you'll get a fast and snappy experience either way, with great cameras and great options. But if you're a specialist looking for something very specific, do concentrate on the software. I don't want to boil everything down to a software-based choice, but it just stands out more than the processor, the camera, the display, the build quality, and such. Alright, so make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Saki Tech by clicking that red subscribe button. I will see you the next time with more videos, and you have a fantastic day.